After I slap in here,
Slate.
say your name.
Joe Harvard.
No, say it
Here we go.
please.
Oops.
And rolling. Action.
Say your name. And
Joe Harvard.
Let's see. Take your time and slowly describe Chet's last call to somebody who'd never been there before.
I'll start with the first time I walked into the building, which was about 5 years before Chet started doing shows there. The first floor of the building, which you didn't realize that the club was on the second floor. And I should mention this, that I was there playing with an oldies cover band. It's the first commercial venture I'd ever tried. I answered an ad in the East Boston Times, which is, no one puts music ads there, and for a guy named Gilly. And Gilly, I went and met him, and he talked for a long time about how he wanted to do these oldies, this guy, that guy. And he said, I really love to do songs by Elvis. And Elvis, he's very excited. And I, who's this Elvis guy? You know, I never heard of some guy. And finally, he says, well, I'll play one. He plays Heartbreak Hotel, of course, and I realized, talking about Elvis, he's a total guinea, and he fucking can't talk. So I joined Gilly's band, and we go, and I wear a three-piece suit and a black Les Paul, which my mother got me because I was vice president of
What was the name of the club at the time?
Penalty Box. Yeah, it was because it's across the street from Boston Gardens, where they play hockey. So we get there, I got my Les Paul from National Honor Society. My mother got it for me. And we got our three-piece suits on. It was a disco. That was how it was advertised, Oldies Night at the Disco. And we walked in, and it's a disco, you know. It's got a dance floor and mirrored balls and mirrors everywhere. And a really kind of cheesy function room. Like, you had to do a function, but you didn't have quite enough money to get a good place, so this is the place you got on this, you know, second floor. But the great thing was, as you entered this, you didn't realize the stairs were on the outside. So you'd get there, you see the penalty box, and you go in the first floor, which is a bar, which is a very dimly lit bar. And the only people that went there, as far as I could tell, were wise guys and cops, off-duty detectives. And it just had this awful feeling of seedy, you know, true detective, people at the end of their ropes lives and morals kind of thing. So, yeah, so you had to get through that, and you say, oh, excuse me, I'm here for the show. And they go, oh, Christ's sake, I go to the back of the building, go around, go up the fire escape. So just getting there in the first place was, you know, it was a little bit of an adventure. And then, of course, well, I heard some years later, after I was no longer wearing three-piece suits and I'd been more involved in underground rock, hey, somebody's reopened that room. And I thought, wow, I can't wait to see, you know, what they do. It's kind of a nice, you know, location. And I remember going over for the first time, meeting Chet. It was fucking exactly the same. You hadn't done anything different. The entire place was like it was put into a time capsule. They screwed it shut. And then Chet came along one day, you know, fucking unscrewed it, and started this punk rock club, or whatever you would call it.
Cool. Let's see. Were you underage back when?
Oh, yeah.
You first played Chet?
When I first played Chet's, would have been, I was a junior in high school when I joined this kid's band for my one gig. So I was about 16.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now, many people, one of the questions we've been asking everybody, do you remember that Chet was a blues singer and could sing very well, even though he didn't sing much. You're the guy, he did come up and sing.
And
Tell
sing
us
what?
about the story.
Well, if it's okay to discuss Chet's 12-step,
Yes.
without,
Yes,
okay, because Chet and I was trying to get clean, and this was 1989 when I first started trying to get straight. I was shooting a lot of dope. Good friend of mine, a best friend of mine from East Boston, a guy named Anthony Rosseo, was a musician, had played Chet's in a band called Slow Children and Boys Say Go. Anthony had passed away, and I got all of his drugs from his really lengthy battle with AIDS. And so I got all these cancer, and I got a habit like I've never had. And so I was on a real tear, and to the point where I finally hit a wall. I mean, I had copped at Chet's, I had run down. Chet, of course, was the only place where you could go and pay the door and buy a bag of dope. And it was interesting, too, because I think the first time I met Jimmy Miller, the great producer Jimmy Miller, who later came, he was our first guy who recorded at Fort Apache North, and I ran into him there. And it wasn't seedy or anything, really. The place was seedy, but it wasn't, it's weird. I never saw anyone do dope at Chet's. I never saw Chet do dope at Chet's. I saw a lot of dope, but that's because you knew who was using. And so if you were using, you would be offered the opportunity to avail yourself of a bag or two. But it was, at any rate, so yeah, I knew Chet this way as a guy who, when I would go and try to buy 2 bags, he would look and go, I only got 8. I can only sell you 1 because I got to go get. Like, he had a massive habit. So I knew him as like Big Chet doing a bundle, whereas I might do, a couple of bags, whatever. And when I ran into him in the halls of NA, I was really very hesitant. I went into a public detox, a couple of them, which I hated. I didn't have insurance, Danvers and Dimmock Street. I was the only white guy in Dimmock Street for a while. So I was trying to make the effort, but I was just about back out the door. I was like, fuck this. I am going to die. So what? And then I saw Chet at this meeting. And I kept looking, thinking, geez, that guy looks just like Chet. And I went up and I said, are you Chet? And I hung out with the guy. That's how different he looked. His aura was different. And he said, Chet's dead. My name is Richard. How you doing, Joe Harvard? All right. So, and I was so impressed, right, that kept me there. And absolutely saved my life, because I didn't get sober that year. I ended up trying everything. I did a crazy geographic cure to Columbus. That didn't work for a couple of years. Point is, I'm still sitting here to be able to talk to you. And if I hadn't seen him in that room for a few nights after that, I wouldn't be here. So he suddenly was in this orbit where I was, doing NA meetings, a couple a day. And there were a lot of musicians. Wow, what a surprise. There's a lot of musicians who have a drug problem or an alcohol problem. And my sponsor played the flute. And he had mentioned, oh yeah, I play the flute. And I got, you're overzealous in the beginning. And I joined a sober band. And I was in a band for a short time. John Macy from Fox Pass and John Macy's Parade, great, he's been around, great songwriter. And, other guys who were trying to get sober, and we played. And so I booked a night where my band was playing, and I think the band was called Black Market might have been playing, which is a sober band. And so we were there, and I didn't know Chet sang, ever. I had no idea. And we were kind of, frigging around, and I said, hey, you guys want to, and I noticed there were so many people at the Middle East that night that were in the program. It was like a meeting. I mean, other than the waiters and the waitresses, it was like 2 of them on. There was nobody but people from AA and NA. So I was like, they'll get a kick out of this. So I went to invite Charlie. I said, Charlie, you want to come up and play? I notice you have your flute, and which you usually won't get on a rock stage with me, I have to be honest. But yeah. Well, I said, well, what can we play? I said, we'll do a blues. We'll just do a blues in G. And Chet said, oh, well, if you're going to do a blues, and I think he might have even tried to play harp, but he didn't have the right key. So I was like, I can't remember how the harp, he's like, I'll just sing. And then he did Steamroller Blues, which I think is a James Taylor song, probably his most rockin' number he ever wrote, right? Yeah, and it was fantastic. It was 10/10, what is that, November 10th, 1989. And he was phenomenal, and he was hilarious, and he had the moves, he had the big guy moves. Yeah, I got a thrill out. And of course, hopefully, you have the tape, you have the evidence.
It's messed up. Jack will know how to fix it.
Yeah, you're gonna need TLC. The sad thing is when I had it out, and I was just going through a lot of stuff, and I said, oh my God, I totally forgot about this. It's a niche, well buried in my history as far as I wasn't very successful.
This documentary
so, yeah, lucky thing, exactly.
I think it's because Chet helped so many people.
He was a beautiful guy, and that's not because he's dead. You know, like we did the Billy Roy interview, and I'm still the truth, but he could be he's a prick, you know, a lot of times. Towards the end, he was a bully. He got mean. I don't know what happened, but he was also a beautiful guy inside there. But Chet, he was a lot less prick and a lot more beauty. I don't know if T-Max, you know, they did a documentary, and we tried to find Chet. These guys from England, punk rock film companies, probably 2002, and they came, and they were doing a lot of other things, Pixies, Dinosaur Jr., stuff that came through Fort Apache. So they kind of sought me out, Buffalo Tom, that world, throwing muses. And I said, well, you know, you should push a little more laterally and look at some of the rooms. And so there was a conversation in the documentary where there was some talk about Chet and Chet's, and T-Max had related that Chet used to say, I'm not really fat. I'm not, you look fat. I'm overweight. I'm not. This is my dick, and it's so big, I've got to wrap it around my belly. So I don't know if he has retold that anecdote. You won't want it, but I thought it was a beauty.
Nobody told it yet. I had heard it many years
ago. Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Chet's spot at the bar. That was sort of his office. He didn't really have an office.
No, not really. And you know, it was kind of a beautiful thing because it was institutionalized without any institution in a sense. You know, you knew what to expect when you came in, and it had a different vibe, and it was Chet's vibe. You know what I mean? It was. It wasn't just it wasn't just like anarchy. Like I don't give a fuck. It was very much. This is what I'm doing. This is mine. And I'm going to just do it the way I want. And if they stop me, then they stop me. Well, I'll go do something else. I remember asking them, are you a little worried about, we talked at one point, I said, are you a little worried about, what are your fucking bosses? They know you're selling dope here? Because sometimes it's fairly obvious, you know, what's happening. And he said, the fuck, what are they going to do? You know, if they say stop, then I'll say, okay. And I'll go somewhere else.
What about the underage thing that Chet said? Very prevalent, and he didn't seem to get busted for it much. And the after hours thing. What do you think?
I think having cops in that building. First of all, I can't imagine that someone who owned that building did not pay somebody. I mean, you know, that had to happen. Growing up in Eastie, I did a couple of shows in the South End. It was before Thayer Street became like lofty. So I'm going to say, Sex Execs. Paul Coldery had just moved to town. It's about 1983. And a guy named Steve Staines was around, and he was living in a loft on Thayer. He was the first guy I knew who had a Thayer Street loft. And I ran into him, started talking, maybe we should do some shows. Oh, great idea. So we did Boy's Life, John Surratt's band, a couple of other bands the first night, Sex Execs. I had a band called The Bones, we played. So we had a great night. And I said, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to open until like 12:30. So we don't fuck with people's shows. And people can come, and then we'll stay open as late as people are here. They BYO, and we call it a donation at the door, which I had heard you could do legally. Like $8, I think we charge, which is pricey for that time. Yeah. So we did one night, and it went really well. By the second one we tried, I had a cop show up at the door and go, excuse me, what are you doing? Oh, you know, blah, blah, blah. I see you have alcohol. Well, yeah, I guess, you know. And he's like, okay, here's the deal. If you want to do this, he gave me a number, and he said you will call and you will hire an off-duty police officer who will come here, and I forget what they call it. They call it a detail. You'll get a detail cop, and they come, and you pay them their, and it was, I forget what it was, $80. It wasn't cheap, but it wasn't a ton of money. So that was a system. They were all, because you got to figure, all those gay clubs and stuff, the Vara clubs, they're all liquid, you know. There was juice flowing around, so I can't imagine they did.
A lot of stuff going on at the Pussycat next door, too, that
well,
pay the police. So
exactly.
Walked a little line and collected.
D'Angiulo's headquarters on Prince Street was maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 blocks away. So, you know, it wasn't like you couldn't imagine there could be the influence of organized crime. I mean, it was like, you know, going to Cafe Pompeii for a pizza. and in the back was Wise Guys. There they are. Look, they look just like they look, you know. And Chet's was sort of, you got that vibe, like whatever's going on downstairs between these cops and these very rugged-looking people. It's kind of like they're all, you know, the dog and the wolf on the cartoon. At the end of the day, and they both stop. Oh, night, and they clock out. Good night, Fred. Good night, George. You know, it's like they go have a beer together. So, yeah, there was some skullduggery of some sort. I don't know that he had any part in it. I think he was just...
How about in '89 when well, Ted asked the question. He'll ask it better than me.
Okay. What happened in '89 that made Chet decide to close?
I don't know. I don't know.
You know the mafia thing came down and they lost their police protection. Like a lot of the police that were doing protection got caught and exposed and so.
Well,
Grasso got shot.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, you know, there was so much going on at that point. You know, that world was turning over. You know, it's funny. The guy who was the creative. What is he? The creative producer of the Sopranos, Frankie, is from East Boston. I don't remember his name in 2 seconds. His uncle ran gambling for the Wise Guys for the city out of a club in East Boston. And he took me one. I ran into him. It's a whole weird thing, but I ran into him after he was in Broadway Danny Rose. And I said, yeah, do I know you? You know, we're in a video store. I had just come from the fort, from a studio session. And he said, oh, well, did you see Broadway Danny Rose? Maybe you know me from there. No, I don't think so. And then I went, oh, I know. You know a guy named Alfred Semino? He was killed a few years back, got shot. Yeah. We were in his car together. You took me to buy a hot baseball glove from some other guy. Oh, yeah. So we started talking, and he was doing a pilot for a show called Maverick Square, which was about wise guys and a family, and they were shooting it in East Boston. And then like 10 years later, I'm watching TV and they're giving out whatever, Grand Emmys. And I'm like, wait, or whatever the frig they give for that. And I'm like, I know this guy, but he used to be much skinnier. And then they say that it's Frankie, whatever the frig his name is. And I'm like, you gotta be shitting me. So it's that world, I guess what I'm saying is that world overlaps. It's not unusual, the arts, and those people are out there. They're, they're part of the neighborhood. So... yeah, I would think that wasn't I was shocked that he could do, no, I don't even mean the dope. I mean just that he could do that kind of music, that sort of open format. There was a lot of dykes, working there and kind of running. And there was this extended family of beautiful psychos that I was just like, like I'm from East Boston. So I'm right the other side of the tunnel. I understand the xenophobia and just the difficulties, the real antipathy of people from that world to people in our world, if I may be so bold, musicians and, especially then, anybody who looked like, someone was a punk.
It's amazing through your conversation, you've answered almost every question that we have, and what you're talking about now is the fact that a lot of people felt at home at Chet's. Misfits felt at home at Chet's. Misfit musicians with weird music that they had written themselves, and nobody else wanted them to play at their club, and Chet let them, and Chet enjoyed the music. And a lot of people met other musicians there, wound up being in bands with other musicians that they met there, and there's this big family tree of people that came up from Chet's. Do you remember that feeling of feeling at home at Chet's?
Well, it's like you have, if you think about what do you need, David Byrne wrote a really, I don't know, fucking Jonathan Richman sent me it. Yeah, he didn't think it was a very good book. He thought it was kind of pedantic. I thought there was some good points. And one of the things that he pointed out is like, what are the requirements for a scene? And it was really kind of cogent. It was like, okay, yep, and a checklist. And then he talks about a few places like Athens or, where did this scene happen? But one of them is just a place or two, some central place where people can meet. And it has to be a place that isn't like up here. It can't be the Paradise. It can be a place where you already have to be professional to play. What you need in order to have a scene is places where you can suck. Where you could, anyone who says they didn't suck is a fucking liar. and anyone, you know, who's good did. So how could they unless they had a place to do it? And you don't get better playing to walls. You get better playing to people. That's actually what it is. There's an exchange. The audience, you know, it's not whatever. It's not philosophy. It's the
That's
truth.
great stuff,
The audience is as much as the musicians. That's why Boston is a great scene, because it has great fans. You know, crazy fucking Captain PJ with his puppets and Tontaleo and, you know, just Billy Ruane, you know. True believers, man. But, you know, I'm playing. These are all people who don't play. That's the key. They're on this side, and Bob, you know, and they're always on this side. You know, they'll step over, but for the most part, it's not like now where nobody is a fan. Everybody is like, oh, I have my video blog. That's why I'm here. You know what I mean? Like, everyone is something. No one just loves the music, you know, to a fanatical degree. So what do you need? You need, high, tier places to get to, but you got to have places that you can suck at. So by then, it was like the Rat. Even, you know, Cantones was gone, I believe, by then. By '89. No, it's all right.
This is the problem.
It is.
Okay, I'm sure. But, well, Dan, we got
He's been
2
thinking
minutes to
about
go
it.
here.
All right.
Yeah, the interview's pretty much done.
Yeah.
But I have a question for you, and anything else you might want to add. But
Yep, no, I got 2
I
minutes, we're good.
I realized that.
Ooh, that's my phone.
Let's leave it as is for this,
And I'll
for the rest of this interview.
at the end of this. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, I do have one more.
Yes, absolutely.
Can you just relate to us? This doesn't have to be about Chet.
Yeah, no.
Your favorite story of the Boston music scene of the 1980s.
Keep it shortish, though.
My favorite story is okay. Well, my favorite story is that Kevin Glasheen was pumping gas on what's the street that goes right by Mass General Hospital that I'm Tremont, and turns into something else. But basically, right by the Mass General, he's working at a gas station. He's pumping gas, and David Robinson had broken his foot, and the cars were playing the Boston Gardens like that night. And they pull up and say, "Hey, Kevin, do you want to come and play Boston Gardens tonight instead of pump gas?" And he says, "Yeah," and he does. And Kevin Glasheen plays for the Cars. I think it was their first Boston Garden show. So that's got to be right up there in the that shit happens, you know, category. So
Great, thank you.
all right, my brother.